देखो थंबनेल पे ये लोग रियल रशिया लिख के नीचे oh she herself is making videos दो धारी तलवार anyhow for those who understand बादशाह खान defying an empire क्या बंदा था यार ये पाकिस्तान में हिस्ट्री बुक्स में इसका ना होना जो है ना वो क्रिमिनल है but that shows you what Pakistan stands for. Why Afghanistan and Pakistan are fighting, I'm gonna watch that. Yep, yep.
Afghanistan's rulers say their border with Pakistan doesn't exist.
Yep, they do. They do say that our border with you guys was just made by the British. Was it?
Afghanistan's rulers say their border with Pakistan doesn't exist. They call the current demarcation imaginary. One senior Taliban minister even claimed that Afghan territory extends as far as the Attock Bridge, deep inside Pakistan. That's not isolated rhetoric, it echoes a broader sentiment within the Taliban government, where many see the border as an illegitimate colonial line drawn more than a century ago. The recent clashes along the border prove the point. After months of rising tensions and sporadic attacks, the situation boiled over into open conflict in early October. Both sides.
Before we even go further, I made a prediction while I was in university that things in Balochistan are going to get much, much worse. And a time will come when you will see a clear political divide, uh, sort of rooting into ethnic identities, especially between Pashtuns and Punjabis. We have that time. Look at KP, कैसा pro PTI or like you know what I'm talking about, right? इवन सोशल मीडिया के ऊपर कमेंट्स भरे होते हैं जो हमारे नूरा लीग के पंजाबी भाई हैं वो कमेंट्स कर रहे होते हैं कि पठान इसका लेके बैठे हुए हैं खान का लेके बैठे हुए हैं मतलब इस तरह की फजूलियात वो कर रहे होते हैं जाहिर सी बात है दूसरी साइड से भी इसी किस्म की फजूलियात होती हैं बट आई आई एम अ स्ट्रॉन्ग बिलीवर कि भाई कोई भी मुल्क जो है ना उसमें जब तक एक ग्रुप डोमिनेंटली मतलब पॉपुलेशन में ना हो ज़्यादा स्टेबिलिटी की तरफ जाएगा अब यूएस डिफरेंट चीज़ है यार लेकिन यूएस का तुम देखो उनका स्टेट सिस्टम है खैर बात कहाँ से कहाँ निकल गई है थोड़ा सा वापस आते हैं इस बात को भी क्लियर करते हैं अगर ये कहीं जुड़ रही हुई इस डॉक्यूमेंट्री से इस वीडियो से
Sides exchanged artillery, gunfire, and airstrikes, and each blamed the other for starting the fight. The timing could hardly be worse. Since 2025, more than 2 million Afghan refugees have been deported from Iran and Pakistan, with some estimates placing the total closer to 3.4 million. The United Nations has warned that this mass return is compounding instability in a country already crippled by economic collapse, food shortages, and weak governance.
मेरे क्वेश्चन है कि why didn't we give them nationalities अफगानी है यूं इसलिए नहीं दी अरे भाई जो आपके पाकिस्तान के फिर पश्तून है उनसे भी नेशनैलिटी टेक इट अवे व्हाट्स द डिफरेंस बिटवीन एन अफगान पश्तून एंड a Pakistani Pashtun? Same language, same descent, same genetics, same cultures, similar landscape. Cross from Balochistan into Afghanistan, and nothing changes. Nothing changes. Go from Quetta to Kandahar, almost nothing changes. Go from Quetta to Lahore, everything changes. Right? फिर वो उनको क्यों नहीं दी नेशनैलिटी स्पेशली अगर आपने जो इंडिया से माइग्रेट करके इतने आए थे लोग उनको दे दी मतलब इन लोगों के बिजनेसेस थे ये बड़ा कुछ चला रहे थे यार I think there was a report by Dawn. Uh, I think I'm not sure. जिसमें बताया जा रहा था कि यार जो रिसाइकलिंग इंडस्ट्री है पूरी इस्लामाबाद कैपिटल के अंदर वो उसमें सारे ही हैं कैपिटल वुड बी बेसिकली a trash can without them. Anyhow, moving on.
Renewed conflict in Afghanistan would not remain contained. Its shockwaves would inevitably reach across the region. History offers a grim warning. For centuries, Afghanistan buried empires that sought to conquer it. Yet now, in chasing the ghosts of lost glory, it risks joining them in the same soil. Now,
Mm-hmm.
I want to take a moment to talk about today's sponsor, Dolly Var's push for control. The Silver Institute
Mm-mm.
Global know this. Check out our company world. In the last 3 decades,
ये इन क्रिएटर्स ने बड़ा फिट काम किया है ना उनको पता है कि यार लोग ब्रेव ब्राउज़र यूज़ कर लेंगे और सारी यूट्यूब एड्स से बच जाएंगे so let's just make the ad a part of your video anyhow what an interesting space YouTube is I see a black mirror type of world coming जहाँ पे सारे immersed होंगे VR AR के अंदर या मोस्टली VR के अंदर और ये कंटेंट जो इतना बनाया जा रहा है ना this is to get everything ready for that world.
since taking control of Afghanistan in August 2021, the Taliban has allowed militant groups to operate freely inside its territory. While the Taliban itself has not carried out major attacks outside Afghan territory, they have given shelter and support to terrorist cells that undermine regional security, particularly at Pakistan's expense. One of these groups is the Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan,
तहरीक
or
तालिबान
TTP for short,
तहरीक
which is
तालिबान
an anti-Pakistan militant organization with massive territorial claims. The Afghan Taliban reportedly supports the TTP with weapons, training, and safe locations, especially in the eastern provinces of Kunar and Nangarhar. Of course, the
नंगहार
Taliban denies involvement, but many within its senior ranks have close ties with TTP militants, and TTP leaders have appeared openly at official events in the Afghan capital. As a result, Pakistan accuses the Taliban government of failing to constrain the TTP, if not outright supporting it. This accusation, however, is tied to a much older grievance, one that traces back to the Durand Line. Drawn in 1893 by the British Empire, the Durand Line split ethnic Pashtun communities between Afghanistan and what later became Pakistan. The line itself was based on the range of British rifles, not on where people actually lived.
yeah
Little to no consideration was given to geography, history, or the realities on the ground. For the locals, the agreement was a disaster. It cut through community.
यार देखो
For the
इस तरह की जो famous like this famous portrayal of a Pashtun woman is technically wrong if you go back into Pashtun roots and this is not something that many people know this is not something that even modern Pashtuns know that their women were not covered like this हिजाब एक होता था एक लूज दुपट्टा होता था और बल होता था बट ये शटल कॉक बुर्का जो है ना ये बहुत बात की चीज है या इस तरह का जो अबाया है ये बहुत बात की चीज है दिस इज नॉट व्हाट मेवंद ऑफ अफगानिस्तान नाम था उस औरत का जो जंग में साथ थी मेवंद ऑफ अफगानिस्तान उसकी स्टोरी पढ़ो आपको पता चलता है कि यार नो 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 दिस इज मलालाई ऑफ मेवान मलालाई ऑफ मेवान यस मेवान एक जगह का नाम है यप ठीक है उसका पोर्ट्रेयल जो है ना हिस्टोरिकली जो उसने ड्रेस पहना हुआ था ठीक है उसकी पेंटिंग्स हैं पोर्ट्रेयल्स है वो इस तरह की तो ये जो बनाया गया है ना पश्तूनों को कहाँ पे किस तरह से बनाया गया और क्या गया वो in itself is a story it was not like this yeah the rules were hard Pashtuns are hardcore people they live in hardcore landscapes but ये जो है ना एक फीमेल को गायब कर दो that wasn't Pashtun culture इसमें बल्कि खान कास्ट की एक पूरी पॉडकास्ट है खान कास्ट is basically a Pakistani podcast platform which does I think at least 90% of its podcasts in Pashto so for those for my Pashtun brothers who think that this is a part of our culture no it's not nope, it wasn't it's kind of a tool that would use against us.
For locals, the agreement was a disaster. It cut through communities that had coexisted for centuries. The Pashtun people were particularly affected. The new border divided their towns and cities. Even now, 132 years later, successive Afghan governments continue to reject the Durand Line. That's not surprising though. Nearly 3 times as many ethnic Pashtuns live in Pakistan as they do in Afghanistan, which has
और अफगानिस्तान का नाम अफगानिस्तान है, द लैंड ऑफ अफगान। अब सॉरी, एक ज़माने में फेसबुक पे बहसें होती थी जाहिल किस्म के, मेरे नस्ट के जो क्लास फेलोज होते थे, जिनको मतलब जिनकी अजीब अजीब बातें होती थी कि यार एक खान होता है, खान होता है, खां होता है, जो खान होते हैं ना वो मोची होते हैं। Shut the तो उस टाइप की आवाम जो थी ना, तो वो कहती होती थी अफगान का मतलब जो अफगानिस्तान में रहता है। मैंने कहा भाई उसका उसका रूट क्या, एक नेशन थी। Afghan basically refers to the word Afghan basically refers to an ethnic Pashtun. आप बलूचिस्तान में जाएं, जैसे फॉर एग्जांपल मेरा कबीला है, ठीक है, या ओवरऑल मेरे कबीले से मुंसलिक जो अल्ताई लोग हैं, तुर्क मंगोल लोग हैं, अगर वो पश्तो बोले भी ना, उनको कोई अफगान नहीं कहता, उनको पश्तून कहता, ठीक है। लेकिन कोई काकड़ कबीले का, कोई कासी कबीले का, कोई दुरानी कबीले का, तो उसको अफगान कहते हैं। ये एथनिकली पश्तून है, ये ओरिजिनली इनकी लैंग्वेज ही पश्तो है। So Afghan basically means, and for thousands of years, Persians, sorry, referred to ethnic Afghans, ethnic Pashtuns as Afghans, right? अफगानिस्तान उसका नाम है और ज्यादा अफगान इधर है, अगर आप historically accurate बात करें।
always fueled strong irredentist feelings in Kabul. So, while Islamabad treats the Durand Line as a recognized international border, Kabul, and by extension the TTP, views it as illegitimate. The TTP's self-proclaimed objective is therefore to stoke instability and undermine Pakistan's authority in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and parts of Balochistan, and then have these regions join Afghanistan. This is the map often associated with that claim. An Afghanistan that borders the Indus River at the Attock Bridge and snakes down along the river to the sea. It encompasses all ethnic Pashtun territories and then some. There is, of course, strategic planning behind this territorial claim. If an Afghan
इतने सादे
government
नहीं है।
were ever able to unite the Pashtun people into a single political entity, Pashtun dominance, currently about 40% of Afghanistan's population, would grow stronger.
And this is where I have a problem with the double standards of Afghans of Afghanistan, Pashtuns of Afghanistan. Why you say कि based on historical records and ethnic identities and topography and landscape and all of that yada yada, your border should extend till Attock. Then why the fuckity fuck do you have parts of Tajikistan, part of Uzbekistan, coalesced with your country? क्यों किए तो? वो भी तो फिर ब्रिटिश ने किए थे ना, वो भी वापस करो उनको, क्यों नहीं करते हो? My community, ठीक है, the community of Turkic and Mongolic people in Afghanistan and in Balochistan as well, to a certain extent, calls the north of Afghanistan as Turkestan. Turkestan, the land of Turk people. Okay? Not the land of Afghans. Give it away though. But nah, that's not what they want to do.
About 40% of Afghanistan's population would grow stronger. Moreover, control over sparsely populated Balochistan would give Afghanistan access to the sea. These two goals, becoming an ethnic majority and escaping landlocked isolation, could form the foundation for a modern, centralized Afghan state. It's a vision that has been shared by all Afghan governments, old and new, including the Taliban and the TTP. However, it's doubtful that Pakistani Pashtuns would want to join with their Afghan kin.
That's also something interesting. When Pakistan was made, 1947, all that's, I mean, very tricky. Gilgit-Baltistan 1948 में हमारे साथ आ रहे हैं, बलूचिस्तान 1948 में आ रहे हैं. Let's say when KP Punjab and Sindh were made in 1947, into a single country, 14 August 1947. That too, arguably, पश्तून बेल्ट के अंदर काफ़ी सेंटिमेंट्स थे to join अफगानिस्तान। जो खुदा खिदमतगार मूवमेंट थी बादशाह खान की, उसने यही कहा था कि किस किस्म का तुम लोगों ने रेफरेंडम करवाया। दो ऑप्शंस दिए, जॉइन इंडिया, जॉइन पाकिस्तान। भाई इंडिपेंडेंस या जॉइन अफगानिस्तान, जो एक नेचुरल हमारे होने चाहिए, वो क्यों नहीं दिए तुमने? और उस रेफरेंडम के अंदर भी, मतलब आप जाहिर सी बात है, वो अगले से अगले मोहल्ले में उसके साथ जॉइन करवा रही हो, या एक कंटिन्यूम में उसमें जॉइन करवा रहे हो जो मुसलमानों का, ऑफ कोर्स पीपल आर गोइंग टू पिक जॉइनिंग मुसलमान। बावजूद इसके रेफरेंडम के इतने क्लोज रिजल्ट्स थे, और उसमें इतने एलिजिबल वोटर्स में से इतना कम जो सबसेट था उसने वोटिंग की थी, तो उन्होंने बाइकआउट किया था। तो काफ़ी सेंटिमेंट्स थे, स्पेशली बॉर्डर के अलॉन्ग। आप अभी भी जाओ यार, इतने ऑपरेशंस हो गए वजीरिस्तान में, उधर से नीचे जाना स्टार्ट करो, तूबा काकड़ी जाओ, सारी जगहों पे जाओ जो पश्तून बेल्ट एक्सटेंड करती है बलुचिस्तान में। एटलीस्ट टिल माई एफएससी व्हिच वाज 10 11 14 15 साल, 15 साल पहले, 14 साल पहले। आप उनसे पूछो तो مش بأفغانستان براتي غير إن أفغانستان باكستان چه شي؟ पाकिस्तान خو تراغزي शुरू की। मतलब एक दूसरे पे गए, पाकिस्तान उधर से स्टार्ट, हम तो अफगानिस्तान में तो लेकिन आहिस्ता आहिस्ता बड़ा कमाल तरीके से डिवाइड जो है इसको ज़्यादा किया गया है। और ऑफ कोर्स फिर जियो पॉलिटिक्स इस तरह के रहे हैं कि ये डिवाइड बहुत वो उधर अफगानिस्तान के जो अफगान हैं, एथनिक पश्तून हैं, वो इधर के पश्तूनों को गुल खान कह रहे हैं, और यहाँ वाले उनको जाहिल कह रहे हैं। अजीब व गरीब। इसमें भी पश्तूनों की अपनी भी जहालत है। जैसे अब कोयटा की पश्तो, साउथ की पश्तो जो कि कंधार से मिलती है, उसको अक्सर सुन के कुछ पेशावरी पमी डैडी पश्तून्स जो हैं, नॉट ऑल पेशावरीज, इवन पेशावरीज नो सब ग्रुप दैट आई एम टॉकिंग अबाउट, वो उस पश्तो को सुन के कहते हैं माजर माजर। इट्स नॉट माजर, इट्स साउथ इन पश्तो। और साउथ में कुछ जाहिल इस तरह के हैं जो कि काबली एक्सेंट, ये पख्तो का एक्सेंट सुन के कहते हैं माजर माजर। ये माजर माजर है, पता नहीं कहाँ से आया है। सब पश्तो तो यार डिफरेंट डायलेक्ट्स हैं, डिफरेंट एक्सेंट्स हैं।
Just as it is unlikely that ethnic Balochi would want anything to do with Afghanistan. Pakistan has plenty of social and economic problems, but it's miles ahead of Afghanistan in all metrics. Still, such facts may prove irrelevant. Ordinary people rarely get to decide their fate when caught in the gears of geopolitics.
In
The
the Game of
response by the
Thrones.
Afghan Interior Ministry leaves little to interpretation. It literally says that the Durand Line between Afghanistan and Pakistan was imposed by force and that the Taliban seeks to reclaim the usurped territories.
Give away the territories that you usurped technically via British help. Return the parts of Tajikistan to Tajikistan. Return the parts of Uzbekistan to Uzbekistan. Do that first. Bismillah.
Broadly speaking, while the Afghan position is understandable, it is by no means unique. In fact, many ethnic communities are divided by borders. It's almost a common feature. Heck, even within Afghanistan, there are ethnic groups that are
अफगानिस्तान, हाँ, तुर्कमेनिस्तान का भी एक पार्ट बिल्कुल जिसमें तुर्कमेन रहते हैं, वो अफगानिस्तान में मिलाया गया। But anyhow, you get the point I was trying to
split from their counterparts abroad, including the Persian, Tajik, Uzbek, and Turkmen communities. And while the Durand Line was indeed drawn by the British, so too were all of Afghanistan's other borders. The northern boundary with Uzbekistan and Tajikistan was delineated by the British diplomat
इसी
Nicholas
बात पे आ गए।
O'Connor, while the western frontier with Iran was mapped by Louis Dane.
ईरान अभी तक फराह हेरात पे अपना क्लेम करता है। हेरात, अभी हेरात जाओ यार, इट्स कंप्लीटली पर्शियन। देयर इज नो अफगान aka Pashtun. There is Pashtun taste in it, but it's Persian. It's Persian.
So if Afghanistan can claim half of Pakistan's territory on ethnic grounds, it inevitably raises questions about its own legitimacy, since roughly 60% of Afghanistan is inhabited by non-Pashtuns. The point is, the Taliban's nationalist and irredentist logic is short-sighted. These
It
types of
is. It
conflicts
is.
always cut both ways, and if pressed on, the blowback could be unimaginable. Since early 2024, tensions between Pakistan and Afghanistan's Taliban government have spiraled out of control. TTP fighters have stepped up attacks on Pakistani targets, especially in the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and Balochistan regions. For comparison, more than 2,600 Pakistani security personnel have been killed in the last 4 years. Media outlets in this part of the world are tightly controlled, so it's nearly impossible to verify some of the details independently. But we do know the following. In March 2024, Pakistan launched airstrikes on suspected TTP hideouts inside Afghanistan, prompting Kabul to denounce the raids as a violation of sovereignty. A few months later, in
Which is
September, new
was honest.
skirmishes erupted when Afghan Taliban border guards exchanged fire with Pakistani forces near Kuram and Khost.
Kuram. Kuram. Did it start near Kuram agency? होस्ट का तो मुझे पता है. अरे ये कुरम एजेंसी वाले बेचारों की जिसका मतलब मेन सिटी पाराचीनार है, इनकी हर जगह लगती है यार. इनकी शिया सुन्नी में लगती है. फिर ब्रिटिश ने इनके जो लैंड्स डिवाइड किए हुए थे, they were divided, their lands were divided in such a way that it created like it deepened a dispute that was already existent. I mean, now a lot of people know about Parachinar. What happened? There were literally convoys in Parachinar back in 2010 to 13, which were seized by, captured by Taliban, and hundreds of people were slayed. When I use the word slayed, I literally mean slayed. With the use of blades, they were cut from the throats. In that sacrificial manner, which is it's so hard to imagine that stuff is happening in modern world. बट कुरम एजेंसी वालों की हर जगह लगती है यार, लैंड पे, अपनी स्ट्रेटेजिक लोकेशन की वजह से, सेक्ट की वजह से. Such beautiful people.
By December 2024, Pakistani strikes in Paktika again targeted TTP camps, killing civilians and drawing strong protests from Kabul. The following year, in March and April 2025, there were major infiltration attempts by TTP militants into Pakistan's Waziristan region, and dozens were killed as a result. Since these events, the conflict has only accelerated.
Of
Pakistan
course.
changed its rules of engagement in August and went on the offensive. It launched a massive counter-terrorism operation against the TTP in the northwest of the country. This operation is still ongoing as we speak, and it underscores that Islamabad is now at the tipping point at which it believes it has no choice but to take unilateral action against the TTP. Since then, hostilities have continued to intensify. On October 9th, TTP militants ambushed Pakistani paramilitary troops, killing 11. A day later, Pakistan responded with airstrikes in Kabul and other Afghan positions, where senior TTP leaders were believed to be in hiding. In retaliation, Afghan Taliban forces, not the TTP, targeted Pakistani border posts along the Durand Line. This fueled hours of the most intense skirmishes reported between the two sides since the Taliban retook control of Afghanistan in 2021.
यार एक बड़े मजे की बात है, and this shows that Pakistan basically has a net Punjabi mentality. I remember when Taliban took over, I had this friend, also a nurse graduate, but she is like this hardcore Punjab de vich mentality. Um, and her mentality basically matched the mentality of a government or establishment by extension. And basically the stance was कि ये हमने जो है ना बड़े स्टाइल से हमने ये जो तालिबान को सपोर्ट किया और इनको हेल्प करके हम गवर्नमेंट में लाए हैं, हमने असल गेम खेली है. हमने उनको सपोर्ट किए. Now we have this pro Pakistan government in Afghanistan, right? तो वो जो न्यूक्लियर पता नहीं डेप्थ क्या स्ट्रेटेजिक डेप्थ दिया, हमने वो अचीव किया. देखो यहाँ से मिसाइल अगर न्यूक्लियर मारेंगे तो ये होगा, वहां से मारेंगे तो ये होगा. और मैं उस टाइम हंसता होता था, मैं कहता था यार this shows कि why you people still do not know the real term for Baloch people and still call them Balochi. You are absolute idiots. You are completely oblivious to the type of mentality that exists in that part of the world, right? They are not going to be your dogs. They're not going to be your dogs. Forget के वो कहेंगे कि यार तुसी सानू हेल्प कीती सीगी ते असी तानू हेल्प कर सान वाला. भाई उन वो they come from a lot of different angles as well. They are like भाई प्रॉब्लम्स भी आपने क्रिएट किए थे. ठीक है, पहले जो वॉरलॉर्ड्स थे उनमें से आपने दो फेवरेट कर लिए अपने. ठीक है, वहां पे आपने डिवाइड किया, फिर उनको, फिर जब तालिबान उसमें आए, पावर में आए, आपने उनको ठुड्डा करवा दिया, कंप्लीटली कंप्लीटली ठुड्डा करवा के तालिबान के साथ हो गया. तो वो तो आपको इस तरह का हाँ, चे से लफ्ज इस्तेमाल होता है, ये समझते हैं. तो पता ही है बड़ा ये था, ज़्यादा तोड़ लूंगी यानो खालक. दीज आर पीपल ऑफ द काले धोती पहनने वाले लोग, वो मेंटालिटी. वो इस तरह से रेशली हम लोगों को ओवरऑल जनरलाइज करते होते हैं. मतलब मैं हैरान हूँ यार कि एस्टेब्लिशमेंट को भी किसी एस्टेब्लिशमेंट में भी किसी को इस चीज़ का अंदाजा नहीं था कि ये होगा. मे बी दे सॉ इट कमिंग, मे बी होता ना कबूतर बिल्ली को देख के दे जस्ट क्लोज देयर आईज, और द बिल्ली डजंट एग्जिस्ट. दैट हैपेंड. Oh, the billy existed. It will always exist.
Both sides claim to have inflicted heavy casualties on the other, while claiming to have sustained far fewer casualties themselves. Both sides also reported to have captured dozens of the other's border outposts during the fight. Again, in this corner of the world, these allegations are difficult to verify independently. After more than a week of fighting, mediators from Qatar and Turkey brokered a
Qatar.
ceasefire on October 19th. Pakistani and Afghan Taliban officials pledged to curb cross-border violence and rein in militant activity. But that truce is already looking shaky. Small-scale clashes between Taliban, TTP, and Pakistani forces are sporadically ongoing and will likely persist for some time. Internal factionalism.
Sometime, here's another prediction. It might get subsided for a while, and a while in terms of history means maybe even 20 years or 30 years. Eventually, Pashtun unity के sentiments जो हैं, they will rise up. Maybe at 80 years from now, maybe 20 years from now, they will rise up.
Within the Taliban,
भाई impossible है. Same language, roots, genetics, landscape, tamadun, aka culture. Uh, मतलब उनको आप कब तक लड़ाओगे भाई? होंगे इकट्ठे होंगे.
further complicates the enforcement of any truce.
ग्रेटर पाकिस्तान बनेगा या ग्रेटर अफगानिस्तान बनेगा? दैट्स इंटरेस्टिंग पार्ट. अफगानिस्तान के जो अफगान हैं, जो एथनिक पश्तून हैं, they need to get rid of their mentality. मतलब जाहिल लोग. इंसान के बंदे के पुत्र होते तो फिर भी उनकी कोई इज्जत करता.
While the Taliban and the TTP have close ties, the latter enjoys complete autonomy. If the Afghan Taliban were to come down hard on the TTP, it would risk internal dissent, and so the Taliban has to cater to its internal jihadist ecosystem. Truce is therefore unlikely.
Yep.
But suppose, for argument's sake, that a genuine truce was restored and maintained, resolving the underlying reasons for the conflict would be exceedingly tricky. The
Yeah.
geography of the region doesn't help either. South Asia and Central Asia form an interlinked security landscape. Any escalation could quickly draw in powers from far and near. Qatar has stepped up as a mediator and is now hosting talks.
It's a very well researched video, and I'm happy how he classified the two landscapes as South Asia and Central Asia. Afghanistan is technically Central Asia.
Doha maintains open channels with various factions within the Taliban when few others could, and this could be instrumental. Saudi Arabia could also get involved given its mutual defense pact with Pakistan. The Saudis view regional stability as crucial to safeguarding their growing security and economic ties with Islamabad. China, too, has stakes in the outcome. It previously
Of
mediated
course.
between the Afghan Taliban and Pakistan and holds enormous economic interests in regional
Both.
stability, particularly in Pakistan. Even the
Particularly in Pakistan. How so? China जो है is this ravenous miner, which is mining like everything in every part of the world. And Afghanistan can easily more than half of the mines are either being invested upon by the Chinese or completely owned by them. और we all know कि अफगानिस्तान के अंदर जो रिजर्व्स हैं लिथियम के भी आई गेस सेकंड बिगेस्ट रिजर्व्स हैं या फर्स्ट बिगेस्ट रिजर्व्स इन द वर्ल्ड और भरा पड़ा है इस तरह की चीज़ों से जो कि आगे टेक्नोलॉजी में यूज होनी चाहिए. China is very interested in Afghanistan. I'm not sure it's as interested in Pakistan as it is in Afghanistan.
in regional stability, particularly in Pakistan. Even the United States could enter the picture. Trump has expressed interest in Bagram Air Base, and Pakistan's outreach to Washington could pave
This is so embarrassing. I wouldn't say for what reasons, but these pictures और इसके आसपास के जितने वाकयात हैं बड़ी सोशल मीडिया पे ऑलरेडी उन पे बात हो चुकी है.
the way for US involvement, though it would come with high costs and security risks. India, meanwhile, may see opportunity in the chaos. Afghanistan is rich in rare
100%.
earths, and with China's export controls in place, India's defense industry is left with growing shortages. New Delhi would therefore welcome any chance to secure rare earth deposits, even if it means strange bedfellows. Interestingly, the Taliban's
Did he just say strange bedfellows?
reimagined map of Afghanistan, where the border
Just the word India and the bedfellow together, the term bedfellow together is gross.
extends to the
Fine, go construe it as a racial slur or as something, a racist statement. But yeah. Literally, the rest of the planet is on it with me.
Indus leaves out the disputed Kashmir region
जो है वो
entirely
है
in the
ना.
hands of India. This suggests a larger strategic move in which India and Afghanistan team up to pressure Pakistan from both sides. It's
सब छोड़ो यार अगर इस तरह के इवेंचुअली आते हैं जो कि मुझे लगता है कि ये हो रहा है ऑलरेडी एंड दिस विल एस्केलेट. Somewhere down the road, Pashtun sentiments are going to rise above country-related sentiments. And all the things which were changed will be undone. Control Z होता जाएगा. What would happen to Pakistani Punjabis? Oh God. जो भी ठेकेदार हैं जो कि और ये तो ऐसा होता है दिल के बंदे सारे अंग्रेज दा ये कश्मीरी जो बेवफा होते हैं बलूची जो है तो उनके अंदर बड़ी बड़ी मच्छी होती हैं वो तो ऐसे अजीब से बलूची लोग हैं हमें नहीं अच्छा लगता इनके साथ क्या होगा.
Afghanistan team up to pressure Pakistan from both sides. It so happens that the Taliban's foreign minister visited India precisely as border clashes with Pakistan were escalating. The details of their discussions remain undisclosed, and the timing may well be coincidental. However, it could just as easily signal a deeper strategic alignment taking shape. Even so, the interplay here is complex. India joining forces with the Taliban is not exactly a good look, and Pakistan could counteract by strengthening ties with Bangladesh or backing the revival of the Northern Alliance. The outcome could be a new, fragile balance, with layers of deterrence stacked on one another. All of this suggests that more episodes of cross-border attacks between the Afghan Taliban, the TTP, and
अल्लाह
the
खैर करे यार
Pakistani
इस
army
रीजन के.
are likely in the coming months. That is hardly what the region Pakistani army
ये बंदा, he looks so similar to that guy from Quetta, Wajahat Khan.
are likely in the coming months. That is hardly what the region needs though. Afghanistan has not seen a single year of peace since 1978, and now the Taliban leadership is steering the country toward yet another war. Sometimes power lies in holding back. In chasing imaginary lines, Afghanistan risks crossing a very real one, the line between power and ruin.
Yeah, brother, and Pakistanis have nukes. Their military is ages ahead of yours.
I've been your host Shirvan from Caspian Report. If you approve of what we do, please leave a comment, hit the like
100%.
button, and mayhaps share the video.
100%.
In any case, thank you
You
for your
guys
time and
are
so.
doing a stellar job.